Plunder Patrol sails away with the PlayStation 5. Yeah, I kid you not, this material writes itself. Don't be like the 30% of you that have not smashed the ever-living crap out of that subscribe button. Smash it so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. Rogues Den out here from Parma Heights, Ohio, had a take-home a PlayStation 5 event. And the breakdown for this event is actually kind of interesting in my personal opinion. We're actually going to be seeing 3 Kashtira decks in Top Cut. Just kidding. That's not all that exciting. We've seen Kashtira has maintained its foothold here as we're kind of heading on into banless season here. You know, possible adjustments and things that we could see here. It's going to be very interesting to see how players are going to adapt to possible losses of cards, or just how the deck itself is going to hold up to the changes that it's probably going to have to undergo here in terms of, you know, future developments here. Now, the other interesting things, Despia actually had one representation here in the Top Cut. You can think a lot of the option trees and things that this deck kind of has to play through in order to, you know, optimize, set up a good board, the pressure that it has to play with underneath the opponent. It's not been a good time out here for this deck per se, so kind of keep that in mind here as time kind of unfolds here for the format that deck is kind of struggling. Then we also have Sprite, but this was an Evil Twin Sprite variant. We actually are getting the chance to see one of the, say, lesser popular variants as of late actually coming on out into the metagame here and showcasing that, you know, we can do other things to actually play the game. We also have a Labyrinth deck in Top Cut for this event. Standard back row operations, laugh at the opponent. Once we get Chaos Angel here in the near future, I think that this deck is going to turn into a much different creature, and a lot more people are going to... A lot of people are not going to know how to deal with this. We also had a Drytron deck in Top Cut here. Drytron has gained a lot of popularity as of late. Like, I think a lot of people just forgot how to play against Drytron, and that is what has given the deck a bigger place in the metagame, at least as one of the more rogue competitors out here. And we also had Plunder Patroll taking down the whole tournament. To be perfectly honest with you, that was not something that I thought I would see today in terms of like how diverse that this Top Cut is and how these other decks are kind of keeping up with that. It's actually quite impressive. We're going to pass on over so you can take a look at these top decks. Winning our event here is none other than Plunder Patrol, sporting off 2 copies of Fenrir in this bad boy. Fenrir for Fenrir, searchability is always going to be good, but the main thing that you mainly are caring about here is it acts as a form of interruption for the deck so that you can spot removal something. Of course, the whole Water Enchantress package as well gives this deck a very, very, very stable engine. Do not underestimate just how stupid good the Water Enchantress package is in this deck, because even though a lot of other decks might not want to play it or not really care about it too much, this is one of the few decks that cares about the interaction that you are given with it. Of course, I mean, we had Emblem and stuff in here, but they opted not even play that. We're just more hand-trapped out of our mind, more immediate-esque answer cards to try to, you know, handle how the metagame is looking out here. So I like what we're seeing here. For the most part, looks extremely good. Next up here is our Kashtira deck locking down second place, sporting off 6 books. Now, what's very impressive to me about that is we're not playing Lances or Forbidden Chalices, any of the other defensive options. We're not even main decking Thrust. Actually, this deck is not even caring about playing evenly at all. It just wants to immediate answer most of what the opponent's trying to do here so that you can just kind of set up and play through whatever their board is. We are playing double Ghost Mourner in here, which I think is fine. Having an additional, like, Effect Veiler S card is pretty good. We're opting for double Desires, double Pot of Prosperity. Desires are really bad in the mirror, of course, because Diabolus does in fact exist. But in every other matchup, the resource generation that you are going to get off of that is always going to feel quite amazing. The sheer amount of plus that you'll be able to just filter through actually is pretty good. Next up here we have our branded list. And straight off the bat, we are focusing on kaijus in here. Interrupted kaiju slumbers everywhere. Holy moly. One of the big things I guess this deck does struggle with is super powerful boss monsters. And if this deck actually has to worry about that, that's an issue. But I mean, look at all of the big super kaiju. I mean, you have the Lightning Kaiju, 2 Radion, Jizukuru. You don't really care about playing the little ones because they all are just going to act as, you know, fusion targets for this deck to start toggling and doing its thing. We're also focusing on triple Crossout Designator in here as well. Crossout Designator is going to be one of your power cards to make sure that your opponent can't actually, you know, turtle through and power the game. Also, what else do you want to Crossout Designator? I guess just standard hand traps. Would really be the only big thing, obviously. Knowing my luck, Call by the Grave is going to end up being one of the cards you want to stop. But, okay. Next up here, we have our next Kashtira deck. Now, this looks a little bit more like I would consider normal here, where we have the Power of Chalices for more defensive options. We are only playing 2 copies of Kashtira Theosis, which I think is fine. We have some dimensional barriers for some extra defensive options. Obviously, being able to paralyze the opponent from making a key play is obviously, you know, the one thing that you're going to get out of this deck. It's going to feel very, very, very strong. We also have Hatronades for back row bounceability, which should also get the job done here. Outside of that, I mean, you're citing Dimension Shifters, even Lancias, and Turtles as well. So you pick your option trees for that you want to go down, but build feels pretty strong for what you want to see here. Alright, next up here, we have Sprite Evil Twin. Now, the biggest things I'll tell you about Sprite Evil Twin are, it feels like one of the quieter versions of the deck. And what I mean by that is, you do have a pretty consistent engine through the Evil Twin package, through the draw and interruptions that you get off of Lilla and the Kishi Sakil. It does also give you access to the, you know, Link 4 if you do play it. I remember back in the day when Ultimate Slayer was a semi-relevant card, but for the most part, they've just opted to not even pressure for that at this point in time. I also see here that overall, the majority of what this deck still is kind of bringing to itself is very strong, consistent options. And I actually think that that is honestly one of the better things. We're also focusing on the Book of Eclipses in here, which for more defensive turtle options usually ends up being a pretty important thing. So I like that. Next up here, we have the Power of Labyrinth. Now, to my understanding, Labyrinth has massively calmed down for what it wants to do. The fact that you can still turtle up, have the same options that you normally would have, is pretty good. We're going to rely on Evenly Matched and Skill Drain here to detour the opponent. I mean, anytime that you can have power trap cards that are as absurdly good as these, it's usually pretty good. I also see that we are citing a Pinkertops down there, and of course the Eradicator, additional dimensional barrier in the side deck, and then of course we have some Cosmic Cyclones to try to detour the opponent as well. A majority of the power options that this deck kind of will try to swing in its favor usually will end up being pretty good. Of course, Bucephalus drop options. Yeah, all of the extra deck options look pretty solid here. Overall, this list looks pretty solid, honestly, for what you would want to see out here. And next up here, we actually have the power of Laugh at Your Opponent all the way to the bank deck. I will say that Drytron's developments as of late have been pretty good. We are also playing the Magician of Black Chaos Max here. Stopping your opponent from like playing the game is always going to be the big goal of this deck, all right? Like, as long as your opponent can't actually interact in any sort of physical form, it's where this deck will get the chance to kind of do its best thing. We're also setting the Odd Eyes Gravity Dragon down there, or the big ritual Odd Eyes. Free ritual summon. I mean, when your deck just doesn't specifically give a darn about stepping through any of the ritual stuff, there's a lot to really consider here for this. But I like what we're doing. It's either the Morph Factor stuff or the Magician stuff. So what do you guys think about these particular innovations out of this event? Please leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think. I look forward to hearing what you guys think about these decks. Peace out, guys. Have a good rest of your day. patrons. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.